Welcome to episode 52 of the WDW News Today podcast. I'm Tom Corliss. Nicholas Cicero with me.
I am here.
Eric's on the road again.
Yeah, I didn't want to leave you alone again.
Yeah.
You've been alone a few times lately.
The first time I got in some trouble because I talked about Universal and people can't handle expert takes on Universal. So, but I think last week was way more positively received because all I did was read attraction backstories.
And was it last week? Last week you were alone. I'm thinking of the week before where you ate popcorn.
That Eric great. Came back for a week to fake play the piano on News Tonight and to eat popcorn.
I always miss the eating shows.
Yeah.
The snacks.
Yeah.
I would have been good on the popcorn show.
Yeah. Well, we have to plot out the next snack episode.
All right.
And I think I'm going to knock on wood. I think not next, or maybe it'll be next week. Look at the calendar. Hold on. Let's look at the calendar and see. We're off with News Tonight next week.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if we're gonna have the three of us for the next one. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
We'll have
we
to
might
see.
have the
Because so Eric's next stop on his trip across America is Anaheim, and I'll be meeting him there where we're going to the media event for the opening of Tiana's Bayou Adventure and the start of the holidays at the Disneyland Resort. So we'll have to figure out what's going on that week. Obviously, News Tonight off for 2 weeks.
Yep.
After tonight, I say tonight because we record this on Thursday live with our WIGS members. You could become one at patreon.com/WDWNT. The $7 and up level gets this every week live and early. So we record these on Thursday. Thursday is also when we do News Tonight live with a studio audience here at WWNT Celebration. And so we're recording this just a couple hours before we go on in front of a capacity crowd. It's not a big crowd tonight.
It's huge.
No, it was a bit huge. Stop. You can't use that because of the theme of this episode, people are going to think you're relating to a political candidate.
Okay.
And I think that's a bad idea on either side of the aisle at this point. You can't pick either side. So people don't respect anyone's political affiliation anymore. And so the huge reference you're making is actually a Fun Spot joke we made on News Tonight a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
Their ad, if you've never seen their commercials, they go, "It's huge."
Do they still do it? I saw somewhere they're not doing it.
Maybe they do something else too, but their tagline's definitely still, "It's huge."
Okay, that's good.
But maybe there's a different attraction or something right now.
They had very boring commercials last time I saw one play. Like, it was just very ordinary. It was like, hey, here's people having fun at a roller coaster.
Oh, it used to have a lot of character. There was that guy who would stand there and he'd do his basic hand motions.
Yeah.
It's huge. What were we talking about? Why did you say it's... Oh, News Tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not,
the audience.
we had a big crowd. We had like 30
yeah.
some odd people last week. This week, I think about 10 people.
Okay.
This is a lull. This is a low attendance time at the parks right now, the lull before the holidays, so to be expected. But nonetheless, Nick, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I had a great week. I just got back from New York City. I took a trip up there. I went to root on a friend at the New York City Marathon.
Very cool.
And it was cool being in the city during the marathon. Lots of people. It really.
Unless you're driving a car.
Well, I'm sure. Yeah. But it really reminded me of the Run Disney. Like I thought going up to New York and seeing that crowd, it was just going to be a more serious, like all the serious runners and stuff like that. But honestly, like after you get through like the actual serious runners, like we saw like the lead pack run by there. Oh my goodness, are they fast in person?
They're professional.
Oh,
that's like their career.
It was mile 18, and they were just
yeah.
But our friend and like other people were like way back in the pack, right? Like so, those people, like you would not be able to tell them apart from a mainstream Run Disney crowd.
Were there people in ridiculous outfits?
I saw a few outfits. I saw like a Mario. I saw a guy like with a fake like horse that he was pretending to ride. Like like.
So how were they similar then?
Well, I mean, in
the
looks
vibe,
and speed.
Just the vibe. Oh,
looks
okay.
And speed. Like,
so you just thought everyone was going to be like the people at the front, like everyone
totally.
just.
I did. I thought everybody was going to have like serious race gear on.
Oh, okay.
But then you get to the end and there's people with baggy shorts and like random T-shirts and some costumes and like, like you're like,
a guy with a pizza box and he's eating it while he runs.
Yeah, it's like you, all right, you look like me. You're not an athlete. You're just out here having fun running this race. And so there is a certain amount of qualifying for that run, though. But there are a lot of sponsor exemptions. Like my friend got in on like a sponsor exemption thing. She didn't qualify per se. But
yeah, the two ways are either you qualify, which is very, very hard to do. You have to be very fast.
Yes.
Or you win, or
you have to win a lottery. You have to enter a lottery or something like that. But you still have to have some kind of proof of time.
You still have to be because New York City's going to start operating.
Yeah.
So you have to. If you think Disney's gonna get you off the course quick, you just wait till you see New York City.
Yeah. But the vibe was cool. Like there were people cheering for people just like Run Disney with funny signs and just people cheering on people they don't know. Like it was great. Nice. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else did you do in New York? I'm sure.
Drank and ate.
Drank and ate.
Yeah.
And went to the Nintendo store.
I did.
Where you got Animal Crossing.
Oh my goodness, so much cool stuff. Yeah. If you heard our video game podcast a few weeks back, you know I'm into Animal Crossing, and I picked up all kinds of stuff, all kinds of good stuff. Oh my goodness. But yeah, nothing Disney related while I was there. Do they still have the Disney store in Times Square? Is that still there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's not great.
It's not great, right? No. Yeah. I went a few years.
It's the same. The same junk as. I was about to say the same junk as your local Disney store. But I forget there are no local Disney stores. It's the same stuff you'll find on either DisneyStore.com or Disney. For us that live near the parks, some of the more generic park stuff, right? Yeah. But obviously on Tuesday was Election Day in the United States, which always brings to mind, when it's the presidential election, a particular Disney attraction.
It does.
Which is the Hall of Presidents. And so I read, obviously, that Donald Trump won on the news this week and talked about the implications. Because it has implications on the attraction, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so the question now is, so the historical intrigue there is, there has never been, since they started adding presidents to the Hall of Presidents, there hasn't been a non-sequential term U.S. president.
Yeah.
So no one has ever been taken from the back rows and moved up.
Right.
So we don't know how this works.
You don't.
Do they just move him up? Do they reuse the audio from previously recorded audio from 2016? Do they re-record him? Do they decide now's a good time to not have the speaking role anymore? Like, it's getting to be a pain and people are yelling at the show. Like, is it best to just stop at this point?
Just have Abe?
I mean, that's how it was before. So before 1993, the current president did not speak in the show. And I don't know that the attraction even used to close back then. From what I've been told, people would just show up one day and there'd be another president in the back and the show was 6 seconds longer. Because they just used to they would every night someone would come in and just, all right, today we're going to shuffle these two guys over and we'll clear this space. Or maybe even back then they had left space open. And so someone would come in and just do the wiring in the floor. And then when the figure was done, they just bring it in and they'd program and then it goes. I think that's how you store. I don't know for sure. If someone does know, let me know. There's not a lot of documentation about how they added presidents previously, but I know beginning in 93, it became essentially the reason for the attraction's longer refurbishment. They would do everything they needed to do, update the film portion, and also add the new president, but with a speaking role. So,
also, will they announce his name twice? Well, no, because there is another non-consecutive.
There is. What's his name?
President.
Why am I blanking?
Grover
Cleveland.
Yeah. So, and they don't announce him twice, right?
I think they announce him when his first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they keep going. So.
Yeah, because they don't give a number. They just announce them.
But it would be weird not to end on the current president, too.
So then they'll just skip him and do him last,
Maybe.
I would think.
Yeah.
Or if they get rid of the speaking role, you leave him where he is. You put Joe Biden back there, too. And then George Washington speaks, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, and that's not what I mean. But do you?
Well, I'm saying
you announce him the
routes
first time or the?
But you're right. I think you have to announce him last.
I think so. Yeah,
it's because people will be like, well, he's the current president.
Yeah, but I never thought about what potentially goes into moving one of those. Like, it's probably not easy.
So usually they don't move them, right? And what I mean by that is the speaking one isn't usually the one that moves. So that might be the skin of the Donald Trump that spoke. That's not the innards. The innards of that figure are probably in Joe Biden. Because there are different levels of animatronic, right?
Oh.
There are the expensive figures which have more robust movement and talk, like there's articulation in the face to talk, and then there's a lot of the presidents and all the presidents can't speak. They can't be reprogrammed. They don't actually have a mouth. The face has a mouth, but the animatronic does not. So they just sit there and they have basic. If you watch them, like there's some that just have their arms crossed, and so they could do this. And like the head, and that's all and blink, and that's all they do.
So you're saying you're pretty sure that, or you're positive about that? Like
I
you're
am
sure,
99%
all the
sure
speaking ones.
The Trump in the back is not the Trump figure that spoke in the show. I am pretty sure that they repurposed the parts of that more expensive figure into what became Joe Biden, or maybe it went somewhere else.
And like same with Obama and Bush.
Yeah, always.
Yeah,
I think always. You wouldn't waste all that articulation, all that money, all those pieces on a piece you're going to shove in the back for the rest of time, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Someone might, maybe I'm wrong, but I can't imagine in a world where they literally went into Stitch's Great Escape and stripped the figures for parts while it was sitting there. I don't think they like to just let good parts go to waste.
So, like, if they do decide to bring Trump back up to the front, they could literally just be take Biden's skin off and replace and like swap them.
I'm sure there's a little more to it, but probably not much.
Because
there's probably like a fitting thing, right? Because the clothes will be a different size. He's a different size human,
right?
And so whatever attaches to the body that gives it the shape has to go in, and so on and so forth. But it probably essentially is that.
That's really fascinating.
And in this digital age, if they just reuse the speech he had before, I'm sure they saved the programming. Like, I'm sure it exists and they could kind of just flip it back on. But I would be almost 100% certain the Trump figure in the back is not the 2016 figure. It's a different figure, just with the skin. Because obviously they don't make this. Maybe they do. Maybe it was time after 4 years of moving. It might have been time to replace the skin anyway. But the mold didn't change, right? It's still the bad Trump figure because the conspiracy theory, of course, is that they thought Hillary Clinton was going to win, and they built a Hillary Clinton figure, and then she lost, and everyone went, "Oh." And then they were like, what do we do? And they're like, well, turn it into Donald Trump.
What are your thoughts on that?
I don't believe that.
Okay.
I don't. And I said, this part I did say on News Today. My belief is the Barack Obama figure didn't look a lot like Barack Obama either. It wasn't as egregious as the Trump, but I don't think it looks like him. And so my theory is it's just whoever they're having sculpt them just isn't as good at it. Because you got to remember, Blaine Gibson, who is a legendary Disney Imagineer, who did all of the presidents in the Hall of Presidents, who did all of the, another vestige there is he was the one who did all of the actors and actresses in the Great Movie Ride, which a number of those had to be signed off on by the relatives or the actual actor or actress. Mm-hmm. And so Blaine had to be good because otherwise, those people were going to say, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And so Blaine sculpted every president up until he retired, he retired. Actually, he might have come out of retirement for George W. Bush, but that was the last one Blaine Gibson did. And I think everyone since George W. Bush has not looked great. And
that would be Clinton, not Clinton, Obama,
Trump, and Biden. Biden might be the best of the three, but I don't think that looks. I don't think it looks exactly like him either.
No, I don't think that one's bad. I never thought the Obama one looked as poor as you were saying.
I don't think it looks like him at all. I think it looks like The Rock. I think he looks more like The Rock than he looks like Barack Obama.
Yeah, I mean a skinny Rock.
But the facial structure I feel like is wrong.
Yeah.
Like I feel like the whole bone structure is different. Like it's like that doesn't look like Barack Obama. I don't know. It's The Rock Obama.
Well, maybe that has to do with talking about using the same skeleton.
Maybe
fitting it over that skeleton, and it's hard to get the right proportions.
Because who wants to spend money on the Hall of Presidents? I think Disney already regrets what their previous administration decided in 1993, that they were going to continually update this. And that's why I think at this point, for a number of reasons, right, they have all the excuses in the world because they have to staff sometimes security guards in that attraction. If you remove the speaking roles, then maybe you don't need to staff security in there anymore.
Were things still happening in there, like even well after the last election?
I think as we got up to this one, I think they were happening again. People were shouting and screaming and being rude to each other and that sort of stuff again. So if Americans can't control themselves, then I don't necessarily blame Disney. And I think, again, like this attraction was created in a much simpler time where even if you didn't, even if you voted for the other candidate, you still would show respect for whoever is the president of the United States. And I'm not picking a side, ladies and gentlemen. I think both sides are guilty. I certainly think there are people who said, I'm not going into the Hall of Presidents because Joe Biden's in there. And now there's people saying I won't go into the Hall of Presidents because Donald Trump's in there. So I'm not singling out a side. I think both sides, I think neither side has that reverence that used to exist. Which is the reverence that Walt Disney had, which is why he wanted the attraction. He admired Abraham Lincoln as a boy, which led to the Great Moments of Mr. Lincoln attraction, which was one of the things that changed the entire industry forever. And then he was like, oh, well, now the technology's getting better. I could do all of them. And unfortunately, he didn't live to see that. But Roy Disney, his brother, who was left to finish the Disney World project for him, Roy was a money guy, and I'm not saying that negatively, but Roy, Imagineers were drawing up a lot of new things for Disney World when it was in development, and then when Walt passed, Roy came in and said we should play it safe and build the things that people know. But there were 3 exceptions, which were Mickey Mouse Revue, which I still don't understand why. But I like Mickey Mouse Revue, but I don't know why that was one of the ones. But the other 2 make sense because Country Bear Jamboree was designed for the Mineral King Ski Resort, which didn't happen. And at that point, Walt signed off on it on his last visit ever to WED, where he chuckled at Mark's drawings. That's why it's called Walt's Last Laugh. And then the other thing was he envisioned the Hall of Presidents. And Roy decided, well, if we're going to build this, we'll build a whole area around it, Liberty Square, and we'll see Walt Disney's vision realized.
See, I never knew that. Is there real documentation that Walt talked about having
there's
animatronics
more.
of all the presidents?
There's tons of documentation.
Okay.
There was, they tried to build a Liberty Street at Disneyland.
I know that, yeah.
And the show with all of the presidents would have been there. So they would have gotten rid of Great Moments of Mr. Lincoln. That show would have went away. And he would have been incorporated into the larger show for all of the presidents.
Okay.
So, yeah, that Walt. What's funny is there's one more thing after Hall of Presidents that is something Walt Disney wanted but didn't live to see, and that's Space Mountain. And so Florida was the list was here's all these things he thought of that he would have liked to see, and we have to figure these out. And so Hall of Presidents was one of the easier ones. Bears wasn't hard either, but Space Mountain was the one that they still needed a couple more years. Yeah, because it was still the idea was so far ahead of its time. But more on that. Actually, at the time of recording this is announced. So I'm going to throw this out there. Space Mountain is a very important attraction. Walt Disney envisioned it. John Hench did the original artwork, and a lot of very talented people, including George McGinnis, saw it through to completion in 1975. In fact, it was January 15th. Of 1975, which means January 15th of 2025 would be the 50th anniversary. And so we are going to celebrate 50 years of Space Mountain with an event called Promising Tomorrows. Registration will be open soon if it's not open already. I have no idea. This is 5 days before the show comes out. Who knows what will happen?
Multiple tomorrows, huh?
Yes, and there's a reason for that. Well, number one, do you know what Promising Tomorrows means in reference to Space Mountain?
No, I guess not.
Okay. Promising Tomorrows is the song in Space Mountain. It's still there. So you know when you first enter the Florida Space Mountain, there's the da-na-na-na-na-na-na. That's the melody And what connects to that melody is then the Star Tunnel music, with the da-na-na-na, all of that has lyrics. There are lyrics to that song. And they were in the attraction from when RCA left as a sponsor in the 80s until 1993. And the song is called Promising Tomorrows.
Okay.
And so because the Star Tunnel music, I think, outlived the lyrics, and that's the name of the song. It's also called We've Come So Far. It has 2 titles. I thought that was a cool name. And also because our event is about more than one tomorrow. Because the other big anniversary for Tomorrowland is 30 years of New Tomorrowland at Walt Disney World. And so we have an event that will celebrate 50 years of Space Mountain all around the world, but also 30 years of Alien Encounter, The Timekeeper, Sunny Eclipse, I know your favorite.
Love it.
We're going to talk about Sunny, the people that made him, and Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress, that update, because our good friend Paul Osterhout was in charge of that project, and he's one of the voices in it, in fact. So we're excited about it. This is a weird event because usually we do park anniversary events. It's kind of cool to do an attraction one. I don't know. This is weird and fun and different. But so far, we didn't know, and neither did some of the people that worked on it, that there are several people still alive, still with us, who worked on the original Space Mountain. Obviously, George McGinnis is sadly no longer with us, but several other people who were involved in the creation and execution of the original Space Mountain are still with us and will be at the event, including our good friend Brock Thoman, who was at Stage 89. He's a really fun individual to talk to. And then Tim Delaney is going to come talk about 3 of the later Space Mountains. He worked on some stuff, some ancillary stuff related to the second Space Mountain, which is Disneyland. He was the lead on From the Earth to the Moon. That's the Disneyland Paris one, which will celebrate its 30th anniversary next year as well. And then Tim also was in charge of the Hong Kong Disneyland Space Mountain. But the goal with the event is to have Imagineers who worked on every single one of the 5 Space Mountains around the world. And then again, the creative people like Paul and Mike West and others who worked on that New Tomorrowland, which those of us who are children of the 80s and 90s grew up with that Tomorrowland and fell in love with it, love it, miss it, are heartbroken every time we walk through that land about it. And so we're going to relive that magic a bit this coming January. So event details, I believe the URL will be spacemountain50.com. It's not there yet.
All right.
But that will be the URL.
Well, to kind of tie it back into today's topic, Carousel of Progress, very patriotic too. It does celebrate America and kind of generations through America. It has obviously a 4th of July scene in it. So a lot of America built into that show as well.
But it follows the American, specifically the American family through the evolution of appliances.
Right.
That may seem silly. Well, it's a commercial for a corporation. It was, but that's also the story of America, right? Those were Those were American-made appliances. They're not so much anymore, but that it told the story of America through what the American house looked like. But it wasn't just. But like you said, it wasn't just about the American house. It was about the American household,
right?
And the people.
It was about the people. Yeah. It was about the journey through the decades. So nice tie in there.
Yeah. And also, yes, it does have a 4th of July scene.
Well, it does, yeah.
But I want to get your thoughts on. I want to circle back to Hall of Presidents because it just offered too good of a segue to Space Mountain for me.
Yeah.
What do you think they should keep the speaking role, or do you think it's okay to go back to what it was?
So I think it's okay to go back to what it was, but I will miss it. And again, not in any kind of taking sides kind of way. I love the idea of the attraction evolving. And sure, every election where we get a new president, we're going to get a new animatronic in there. Yeah. But all right, great. But the show actually changes a little bit because they give the new president a speaking role. And I just like the idea of that. I like that to have an attraction that can get updated that way, can change, because a lot of those, a lot of attractions don't get any kind of real updates or things to look forward to. This is like a regularly scheduled kind of update, you're going to get. And Yeah, I mean, but I totally get it. I mean, we are in a different time, and it is sad that people are going in there. I mean, I don't think, I wouldn't fault Disney for getting rid of that headache. We kind of did it to ourselves. If it's one of those things that
look, there's all sorts of
handle it, so they're taking it away from us.
Like Carousel of Progress, that not being updated, you could blame Disney.
Right.
That's Disney's fault.
Right.
Disney has for 30 years let that attraction sit with the grandpa yelling about laser discs, and thankfully high def TVs are still a thing. They lucked out on that one, but he does mention car phones and laser discs.
Yeah.
But that's Disney's own fault.
Yeah.
Hall of Presidents, if they decided to, it would save them money. Obviously, they wouldn't have to update every 4 to 8 years. But at the same time, also, like, do we really need a show about presidents where people are in there screaming? It's like, I can't imagine at the American Adventure if people went into the American Adventure and started screaming at it.
Yeah.
These are very respectful presentations about our country's history. And so, I don't know.
I mean, there's no agenda in the recordings, I don't believe, either.
They absolutely, all the shows stay very politically neutral.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's something a little bit quaint about the president going in and recording a message for the Hall of Presidents at Walt Disney World. I mean, there's something.
It's cool.
That is just cool about that. Yeah. Like
to sit there and know, like, oh, well, Disney's such an important thing in American culture that the president, like, one of the first things they have to do once elected is schedule a recording session and make time to do this.
Yeah.
It is a neat thing.
Yeah. So I'd be sad if it went away, but it wouldn't ruin my enjoyment. I mean, I do like the show. I do. I mean, I am fascinated by history. I know, like, as a kid, like, I still remember, like, having the you had to wrap your books. Like, did you have to like cover your books with the book covers? I always had these like presidential ones. I used to like memorize the presidents and stuff. So I had like the years they were elected and all the little things. I
remember that. I think that held on forever.
Yeah.
Until finally someone created. I think by the time I was getting ready to get out of school, they finally had like the ones that stick to the book.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, those started coming in. But before that, I do remember like having to cut it and make sure and tape it down. And,
right.
Yeah, and then eventually the adhesive was on it and it was just clear and it was boring. Yeah.
But yeah, I always was fascinated by history and the presidents and things like that. So I really enjoy it. I love just kind of going in there and randomly picking a couple different presidents to stare at the whole time and like see the different movements they make. You know, like you said, some have like subtle movements where they're just like wiggling their foot every now and then. It's fun to kind of take that in. I don't know. There's just something quaint about the roll call too, where they go down and they nod their heads and stuff like that. I really, really do enjoy the show, but I it's a dynamic show that that's changing every 4 or 8 years, and I enjoyed that.
They got lucky for a long time. They were getting those 8-year runs of it,
right?
Yeah, the first 2 they got 8 years, and then Trump lost, and so it was the first 4, and now right. But they got lucky this time because it was another 4, but they get to use something they have.
They got lucky.
Either way, they don't have to make a new figure,
right?
Whether they decide he talks or not.
So that'd be interesting.
They saved some money this time around. But here's the thing. I have some problems with the Hall of Presidents that are not related to any recent presidents. My problem is Abraham Lincoln. So I love the attraction at Disneyland. Great Moments of Mr. Lincoln is magic. As a Disney fan, that is like a religious experience for us.
Yeah.
I think at Disneyland there's a couple places where you go in and you feel you go back to the park as it existed when Walt Disney was alive. And you could sort of feel his presence. I think Tiki Room is one. I think most definitely Lincoln is the other. Mm-hmm. Using the Paul Frees narration, the original music, and then Royal Dano's voiceover of Lincoln, which is, I think, like, I don't know what Abraham Lincoln sound like, but in my head, if I hear Abraham Lincoln talking, it's Royal Dano.
Oh yeah.
And so instead, at Walt Disney World, that's not who's speaking. It's a very modern sounding recording of someone with a very announcery voice.
I agree with you.
And the whole time he's talking, I'm just like, Why? Why did you do this? Why do we not just let him do the speech from Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln? That should just be instituted in the Hall of Presidents. I think it's so perfect. Yeah. And it's your legacy. It's Disney's legacy with the presidents. So if they could just switch that out, I would be much happier about the Hall of Presidents. But it really bothers me.
Wow. What really bothers me that they got rid of was Great Moments in American History with the Muppets.
Outside, yeah.
Yes.
So people keep saying...
that upset me more than anything.
Like, people in our comments and everything inside. Keep jumping and saying, why don't they put the Muppets inside?
Oh, gosh, no. I'm even, no. That's too much.
Yeah.
Maybe in the pre-show area, the waiting area. Yeah. Like, have them do a little show in there while you're waiting.
Does it set the wrong tone for the Hall of Presidents, though? Yeah, but
who cares at this point? Get people. I mean,
I like the waiting room.
Give a little levity. That way, if people are angry waiting to go in, they have the Muppets. How can you be mad if you just saw the Muppets and now you're going into even if you don't like whoever the president is, whoever's ever up there on stage, you're still in a good mood after seeing the Muppets. Cheer people up.
That is a really cool little museum, though. Essentially,
it is.
There's some really neat stuff in there. And I like that I know why they added the Walt Disney thing. I think a big part of that was establishing why they still needed to have the Hall of Presidents when Trump was added. And it was like, oh, this will calm people down maybe. But as the years have gone on, the more I'm like, it's his attraction. Yeah. It is something he asked for. It's something he wanted. Like, I don't have a problem with this. I think it works really well. And the dedication of the one thing I don't know that I need the dedication to Walt Disney at the beginning, where it just says this presentation is dedicated to Walt Disney. I probably don't need that after I already saw a bust of the man and a plaque dedicated to him right outside the door. You know, I got it. Everyone has to pass that. We're all right. It's okay. But yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the Muppets, that show was one of my favorite, like, Muppet things in the parks. I just, like, it was so good. It was done so well, right? Like, it was written with a lot of humor and kind of, it was perfect for that area. Like, they used the space really well. It just really worked so well. And I remember talking at the time that not only made kind of American history kind of fun, like, because that's what we're supposed to have, kind of like that's how you like kind of have that edutainment, type thing where you're educating and entertaining at the same time, and that totally did it in a fun way, and it made the Muppets relevant again, to a new audience. I think I just really enjoyed that part of the park, and it's a shame that had to go. So if I had to, I'd want that back, and that you could if you don't want the president to talk, that's fine. Yeah. Keep that. Save that money. Put the money back. Put the money into the Muppets.
That would have been spent on updating the show. The money that you would spend on updating the show. I would bet the money spent to update the show would equal 4 years of paying entertainers to do that show, probably. Wild guess. Okay. Disney overspends. They overspend. It's not necessarily always their fault. Because when you work with a vendor, they're like, well, it's Disney. Just charge them this. Tell them it's this much. You could charge them more. They're Disney. And they usually won't say no. So, yeah. No, that Great Moments in American History was one of the best pieces of theme park entertainment I've ever seen. And it's a shame that they didn't listen to people and keep it. But, I don't know if they're listening now, but, we've seen a couple acts return to Animal Kingdom. We have 3 new holiday acts at Hollywood Studios during the day. I mean, it'd be a good time to be like, hey, let's bring the Muppets back. But we'll see. I mean, there's about to be a lot of heavy construction there, so maybe you don't want people gathering in that pinch point. Eventually, that river's going to close, and I imagine those walls will come out a little further than the edge of the river, so... We shall see.
So, were you planning on talking about the theme park Disney never built, Disney's America?
Oh, we absolutely can talk about Disney's America, yeah.
So, I'm always fascinated by that.
Yeah. Let me give the. I'm going to look up the basics. I'm going to give you because I'll just end up jumping into the middle of the story, and that's a mistake. Because some people may not even know.
When I first learned that, I was floored.
I assume if you're watching this, you know what we're talking about. But Disney's America was a proposed Disney theme park in the early 1990s. A site was selected in Haymarket, Virginia, approximately 5 miles from Manassas National Battlefield Park and 35 miles west of Washington, D.C., accessible from Interstate 66. Disney's America would have consisted of 9 distinctly themed areas spanning 125 to 185 acres. It would have featured hotels, housing, a golf course, and nearly 2 million square feet of retail and commercial development. The $650 million project was announced on November 11th of 1993, and it would be a theme park dedicated to the history of the United States, scheduled to open in 1998. It did not happen. It had the support of politicians, but a lot of local residents were unhappy, A, about the traffic that would have been brought to the area, and B, about apparently the site was not the site of one of the most famous battles, but still a famous battle site nonetheless, at least it was a battle site.
Yeah.
And because of that, people are like, you're going to build a theme park on a battle site? And Disney's like, well, the theme park is about educating people about American history. And that still didn't sit well with people. And so it didn't end up getting built. But this was a big Eisner era thing. It was a thing he really wanted. Mm-hmm. Some people say if Frank Wells had survived, it would have happened. I don't think so. I think they just ran into so much backlash. And what's funny is if you listen to or watch the Bob Weiss interview, I think he even briefly said like it was never going to happen. I think he was in charge of it. He was creatively in charge of that park. And I think he said, he's like, we knew from the beginning it wasn't going to happen. So
I wonder how controversial that park would be if it was around today.
I would bet 50% of the opening day attractions would be gone.
There'd be a lot of cringeworthy stuff in there, even if it was just built in the 90s, I feel.
Yeah, so that's a kind of a cringeworthy period of attractions, right? Yeah. Because if you look at, we're going to draw a parallel. There's a strong parallel, and I don't know that people know this. But if you went to California Adventure when it opened, you kind of went to Disney's America. There were a lot of things recycled from that project into California Adventure.
I guess that makes sense timeline-wise, right?
Yeah. So they were supposed to have a Lewis and Clark River Expedition raft ride.
Okay.
Became Grizzly River Run. That became that area of the park. There was supposed to be an amusement, an area themed to the American Fair.
Yeah.
Paradise Pier was just changed into a pier instead of a fair. There was an area themed to an airfield with a flying attraction called Ultra Flight.
Oh, wow.
That became Soarin'.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure this document lists all the lands and attractions, but a majority of them were reworked. The farm. There was a farm area. California Adventure opened with a farm area, the Bountiful Valley Farm, where you got to sit on a tractor and not much else.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the life of this thing didn't end when it was canceled in September of '94. They blamed the Euro Disney finances, the death of Frank Wells, a number of things, but also like the people really didn't want it there. But then when Knott's Berry Farm went on sale in 1997, Disney talked about buying it, and the idea was to turn that into Disney's America.
Oh, wow. Okay, I didn't know that.
Because the park already had areas that you could kind of just retheme.
Right.
And that was the concept, and that did not happen. There were a lot of crazy off-site expansion plans for Disneyland Resort in the 90s, the other being Disney Sea in Long Beach. I've told that story before where if you wonder why Disney Sea in Japan has a giant cruise ship in it, it's because Disney bought the Queen Mary in Long Beach and designed a theme park to go alongside it in Disney Sea. When they sold the project instead to the Oriental Land Company, as the story goes, was like, oh, and the boat too.
And the boat too.
And they went, well, no, the boat's in California.
Stop it.
And they're like, but we could have the boat, right? They're like, we could build you a boat. What do you want to put in it? 3 restaurants. No, right? No, just 3 restaurants in the boat. It's just for dining. Build a full-size early 1900s cruise ship.
That's amazing.
For 3 dining venues, please. And that's what happened. They built American Waterfront with a full-size fake ship in it. But bringing us back to Disney's America, yeah, a lot of that was recycled.
Wow.
But there was supposed to be a Muppets American History attraction.
Yeah, I remember hearing something about that. Yeah.
There was an Ellis Island section, and the Muppets were going to tell you the story of American immigration.
Right.
That certainly would have made it. That'd still be there, right?
Oh, okay.
We're not touching the Muppets immigration attraction. Oh, I don't know where Animal's from.
I don't think anybody
Is he from
does.
America? I don't know where he's from. There's some Muppet fan that's like, no, he's from blah blah blah, and I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to start like saying places, but I don't want to offend anybody. So I'm going to.
Is he from like a wild jungle somewhere? I have no idea. I don't know. Gonzo's from another planet, so Gonzo is the most illegal alien.
I don't know. Maybe he's like a Canadian drummer. I could see Animal.
He's Canadian. No, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, yeah. Would you obviously you would have gone to that park?
I'm sure it would have. I mean, that would have been. I'm sure,
too.
like, so it would have been built in the mid '90s, right? So
it would open in '98.
Yeah. So I'm positive we would have went. Like
Yeah.
I was in Connecticut. We have easy trip.
Yeah, I mean, when we didn't go to, we typically wouldn't come here in the summer. We would come here in like the winter and the spring every year, and then the summer. My parents famously took me once for the 4th of July very early in my life and said never again. And so summer trips changed every so often, but usually every other year we went to Virginia.
Oh, okay.
And so we'd go to Busch Gardens and we'd go to King's Dominion and Colonial Williamsburg too.
Yeah.
All in close-ish proximity.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we would have wrapped it into one of those trips and probably still also went to those places. But I think for Busch Gardens, it probably was a good thing because it probably would have hurt them in some way. Although maybe not, because did people want to go to a educational theme park, or did people want to go ride roller coasters and drink free beer at Busch Gardens? I don't know. They might have run into problems there.
You serious? You think that would have hurt?
Epcot opened as an educational park, and people hated it.
Yeah.
It didn't succeed until you had Michael Jackson dancing, right? So, by 1998, I mean, you're what are you, 15, 16 years past the opening of Epcot Center? 90s kids, the last thing they wanted to do was learn.
Sure.
So I think people it would have been big. Like, I think they would have nailed like the school trips.
Right.
Northeast school trips. Like, I think for sure, New York schools, anything in the vicinity would have planned school trips out there, and they knew that'd be a big part of their business. But I don't think their attendance would have been great. I think it would have been a fight.
Yeah.
Another famous ride, they had a roller coaster called the Industrial Revolution.
Oh yeah.
The concept art is amazing. I hope I'll show Billy where to find this. But it's people going upside down on a roller coaster, and they're in like an ore car.
Yeah.
And then there's just like melted ore underneath them. It is probably the weirdest piece of Disney concept art that exists. And the Industrial What are you buying Lightning Lane single pass for? Oh, we should get it for the Industrial Revolution. Imagine that park with Lightning Lane. All right, 340, we could go Great Moments in Immigration, or we could ride Ultra Flight. What should we do next?
It would be such a weird park. It'd be really interesting to see how it would have aged.
What IPs would have replaced the existing park is the question.
True. Captain America, it would probably...
But it's east of the Mississippi.
Oh, yeah.
They can't.
Huh. Yeah.
That is east of the Mississippi. I'm not crazy.
Yeah, no, it definitely is.
Okay.
Definitely is.
I don't know where the Mississippi goes once it's higher. I don't know.
Yeah.
Where does it go? I have to go look now. I probably sound like an idiot.
The Great Lakes?
Where does the Mississippi River? But like, where does it? It turns somewhere, doesn't it?
Or does it? Yeah. Well, no, it doesn't turn that far east.
No, but like, what state? I don't know what's if it curves around or.
No, it goes around Ohio and Wisconsin, maybe. Those states.
Yeah, I in my mind, I'm losing track of it around like Illinois. And it goes north. It keeps going north. It goes, yeah. Okay. It goes up into Minnesota. All right. I didn't know that. See?
Kids will
like
learn
I know
something today.
From like St. Louis down, I can picture in my mind. The rest, I
So do you think that park would have probably went the way of like DCA, where they had to do just a huge overhaul not that long after it was built?
I don't know about. Maybe.
I mean, we're talking 98, right? Like, so things really start to change politically just in that next 10 years, really.
I mean, the first real controversial political election is 2000.
It is.
People start to get a little more divisive, but
and
not
then
really.
Even more so, I think 2008. I think.
And then by 2016, we're rabid.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
I think even in that short period of time, I think things so change. If you didn't like live through those periods, if you weren't an adult through kind of like the early 2000s, like when I just feel like the landscape of political discourse just changed so much.
Absolutely.
And I think just the evolution of our thinking about a lot of societal issues changed so much that I just feel like a park that was built on 90s values and styles and ways of thinking, just that, which I mean is kind of a long time ago at this point, but it I think things should change so much. I think it would be such a weird park these days where it'd be a lot of controversial stuff in there. I would
just
think.
3 years later, when they built California Adventure, they decided they're still kind of going that route, right? And so they built what I call an educational film about the history of California.
Okay.
Called Golden Dreams.
Right.
Have you ever watched it?
No, I never watched it.
It's terrible. And it's super offensive.
Really?
It's bad. It like ends before the film-wise, it's kind of a ripoff of American Adventure. So they go into they have like an emotional, it's a great song. Don't get me wrong. Amazing song. And it goes into a montage very similarly to American Adventure at the end, where if you watch, you're like, oh, they ripped off American Adventure. Okay. But before you get to the song, like one of the things that leaves off there is like these Chinese immigrants getting blown up by dynamite. And you're like, are we really leaving off there? Like the screen goes white from the Chinese immigrants being exploded. And then suddenly it's like gold. And then it just goes into the song. You're like, no, what have you done? Yeah. And also Whoopi Goldberg is the host. And her face comes to life on a statue in the theater. Really? It was like early projection mapping.
Yeah.
Early projection mapping. There is on YouTube out there is a beautiful video that someone who had all the source video files put together, which actually combines, like it takes a static image of the statue and they actually put the film of her face on it. And it's really cool. So you kind of get to relive the whole attraction on YouTube if you'd like. To see if you agree with me about how bad it is. Yeah. Give it a watch. The song is spectacular. Just One Dream is one of, I would say, top 20 Disney songs for me. Tremendous original attraction song. Terrible original attraction. Hideous build. It was a big stucco building that was barely themed, that was hidden behind essentially a mural on stilts. And then also what is the San Francisco structure called? The dome. The art, something of the arts, Palace of the Arts. That was there as the entrance of the attraction always, and that they kept that for Mermaid, but they leveled the rest of the building to build Little Mermaid. So, would that have happened? Like, would things like that have happened? Where like, oh, we leveled the show about America and built a Little Mermaid attraction.
Oh yeah,
you know, would the amusement fair, would they have found a way, like Toy Story Mania? Probably. Someone would have came to the same thought where they're like, oh, well, it's about American fairs. What do you do at the fair? You play games of amusement. Okay, or games of skill. Let's build a Toy Story ride where you play games of skill. Okay, cool.
I mean, Chapek would have had a field day with that park, just shoving IPs in there, right? Like, because no one would have probably cared that much, right? Because
it was a young park, so who'd be like, oh, he's ruining it.
No one, yeah.
It's like DCA. You could have, at that first go around, you could have done anything.
Yeah.
No one would have cared what you did to anything in that park. The problem was the next go around, which Chapek came in after the redo, and they undid a lot of the good work people had done, like fixing Paradise Pier. They went back over it again with an even worse overlay, which kind of took it back to the first go around. Removing things like Minnie's Fly Girls and Instant Concert Just Add Water. I don't know if you remember those.
Well, no, I don't.
So in 2012, Goofy during the day would come out into the Paradise Gardens, the park, the viewing area for World of Color, and conduct the water fountains.
Oh, okay.
It was a really cute show. And then to make the airfield area more complete, they had Minnie. Yeah. Like it was like sort of like Pan Am.
Right. I saw
like Pan Am Girls music show, which was super cool. And so there was a lot of like, what became cool about DCA was it was like Disney influence, but it celebrated like past California, like what it was kind of the California people have in their minds, which is like cool car culture, Hollywood, the glitz and glam of old Hollywood, beautiful national parks. Mm-hmm. It really went into the nostalgia people have for like older California. And instead, then the next time they came through, they were like Silicon Valley, but Marvel. Like, oh, okay,
yeah.
Put more decals on the pier, but you already fixed this. It's you fixed this part. Why are you ruining it again?
So where else America do you want to go? American Adventure at Epcot?
We have to talk about the American Adventure.
Yeah. So, I mean that's to me that the actual obviously it's a pavilion, but the attraction is one of my favorite attractions of all time, just because of the sheer scope of it. Mm-hmm. So that one was always kind of near and dear to my heart. That one I love. That one, I mean, that's another one talking about, can it get updates? That would be great. That would be fantastic, but I don't know how they'd even go about that.
Yeah, it's kind of stuck now, isn't it?
It kind of is.
They
right?
just update the film. I don't know if I have a problem with that.
The amount of work it would take to they can't like add another scene, right? I mean, it's probably physically impossible to add on scenes, right?
For those that don't know how the American Adventure works, it's kind of like Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run in that it's one of those attractions where they built something incredible, but you don't even realize what's happening.
Yeah.
So the way it works is underneath you, it starts in the back of the building and then goes underneath you. There is what they call a train of show scenes. So as you notice throughout the show, animatronics pop in and out and other things come in and out usually from the bottom. Those all aren't just sitting there all in a row under the stage. Those come up in sequence. And so a scene rolls up and Ben Franklin and Mark Twain come out and then they go down, and then they go under the audience and the next scene pops up and then it goes down and then they go under the audience and that keeps happening. And so obviously you can't make it longer. Right. You can't add more onto the train. That won't work.
Yep.
So you'd have to do what has become like the Carousel of Progress problem, which is, well, what do you do? Because your scenes are, 1900, 1920, 1940, and then today, right? That becomes a problem because you've skipped so much time. And so people often say, like, when they redo Carousel of Progress, maybe they need to make it every 40 years. So it works. The American Adventure, I think people would say the same thing, where it's like, well, what do you do? Like, you still start at the same point, but you have to jump more time to get more recent. But the thing I will say is even in 1982, they realized a recency bias was not a good thing. And so the show ends at World War II, which was still almost 40 years earlier. The end of World War II was still 40-something, or almost 40 years earlier than when that show opened.
Sure.
And that's where they stopped. And then they're right, the more recent stuff you get in a montage at the end. Obviously now, 40 years have passed, and do you just keep adding to the film, or can you can go another 40 years forward in the show, right?
Yeah. So I mean, people have a problem about anything, but like I don't feel people have like I feel this show is kind of universally accepted as pretty good. Like I feel it's pretty. It has a lot of representation in there too.
It tackles a lot of hard
in
topics.
The early '80s. Like I think they did a good job of making sure different social issues, different groups of
was it the
people
first,
are all represented.
Probably the first speaking roles and attractions for several minorities: African American,
might be
Native American. Trying to think if there's anything possibly before that had that representation, but probably not. No, nothing I could think. I might be wrong. I'm just spitballing, but I think that's probably the first time African American and Native American people were represented in an attraction.
I mean, I think nothing's perfect, but for a theme park attraction, I think it does a pretty good job of telling these little vignettes of the American story.
Yeah.
Going through the years. Like it does give a little probably rose-colored glasses a little bit, but it does tackle issues.
But there's lots of negativity.
There is.
Right? There's Chief Joseph who talks about how we mistreated Native American people. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is oh my God. It's not Frederick Douglass, is it?
It is.
It is Frederick Douglass, yeah. Frederick Douglass comes in and talks about Uncle Tom's Cabin and the suffering of his people. Yeah. Those are hard topics. And then also there's the part with Roy Rogers, which is not positive. It's him criticizing the government for diminishing the naval fleet.
I mean, don't forget the suffering poor cold soldiers with no shoes.
Yeah. I mean,
not
necessarily positive.
No,
it shows you the hardship they fought in the war, and also, there's a lot of death in the attraction.
There is.
The pilgrims die immediately.
Yeah.
It's that song, like it's and they're dead. It does. Okay.
Look, it does a very good. It does a very good job of telling the American story.
Yeah,
and it's. That's but so all that together, I think that's why it's one of my favorite attractions. It's actually a good story. The music is
second
memorable,
to none.
Second
to none.
The sheer engineering that goes into the attraction itself, it has all the right elements of something that I really love at the Disney parks. So
I think sometimes some generations of Imagineers would often use, or maybe it was a Dick Nunis thing, I forget, said Walt Disney, what do you think Walt would think? And he says, what took you so long? And I think American Adventure is one of those where that would apply, where I think he would have been, I think by all accounts of those who worked on it or saw it and that knew him, were like, he would have loved this. He would have adored this attraction. He would have been amazed at how much further we could take technology to tell the American story. But it's that next evolution of Hall of Presidents, where again, it's not about presidents, but it is using, the latest technology to engage people in history, which, he loved. He did. There is no doubt, based on a lot of the things he wanted to do, how excited he was about Carousel of Progress and possibly building Edison Street, how excited he was about, he opened Lincoln and then immediately was like, how do you make this bigger and better? I want all the presidents.
Yeah.
And he built it. The entrance to his park it's Main Street USA. It's meant to be, an homage to not just where he grew up in Marceline, but really to all of the small towns that grew in America at the turn of the century. Disneyland, in many ways, is a love letter to America. A lot of it is. And so, he clearly loved his country very much. So much so that he really only ate the food of his country. And by that, I mean chili and fried chicken.
Plain chili. Yeah.
And bread.
Ugh.
They really went on and on about the bread at the Marceline event.
Really?
Bread was a big thing at the Marceline event. They talked a lot about his aunt's recipe, or was his mother's recipe? I don't remember. We just were like, we've spent 15 minutes talking about bread. Can we move on? For those that don't know, I did want to read a little historical piece about Walt Disney and his patriotism, which would be, this is called World War I Walt. This was written by the late Disney historian Jim Korkis. I'll just read you a little bit of this. Obviously, if you've seen One Man's Dream at the park, you know some of this. But during World War II, many employees of the Disney studio left to join various branches of the armed forces. And when Card Walker came up and told Walt that he was leaving the studio to join the Navy, Walt first tried to talk him out of it and then eventually said, "You're a lucky guy. I'd like to go myself." Of course, if you're a Parks fan, you know Card Walker, who was in charge of the parks for a bit, including through the opening of Epcot Center. Walt was either too young or too old when the United States went to war, and as a result was never a member of any of the branches of the armed forces. However, Walt grew up in a time when it was an honor and an obligation as an American to serve your country. "Tomorrow will be better for as long as America keeps alive the ideals of freedom and a better life," Walt stated during World War II. And while Walt never served in the armed services, he was always one of the strongest supporters of Americans in uniform, even as a teenager in Kansas City, Missouri. During World War I, Walt drew patriotic cartoons for his high school newspaper. Those drawings displayed his passionate support for the troops and included helpful suggestions like buying saving stamps or eating less so more food could be sent overseas for the troops. A caricature of the Kaiser usually took the brunt of Walt's youthful fervor, as did people who Walt felt were slackers since they hadn't joined up to fight the Huns. Walt's older brother Roy joined the Navy on June 22nd, 1917. "He looked so swell in that sailor uniform," remembered Walt, "so I wanted to join him." Walt's other two brothers, Ray and Herbert, served in the Army in the newly formed American Expeditionary Corps. Walt and a friend, Russell Mass, I suppose that's Mass, tried to enlist, but Mass was rejected because his eyesight was poor, and Walt didn't want to go without his friend. Deflated, they got jobs at the post office together. And then Mass found out about the Red Cross Ambulance Corps and that they would accept volunteers as young as 17. They applied as St. John's Brothers and were rejected, so the boys planned to sneak away to and sign up. Russell's mother found his packed suitcase and called Walt's mother, and they stopped their sons from running away. And while Walt's parents were not happy about Walt's plan to go overseas, they reluctantly allowed him to sign up when he pleaded, "I don't want my grandchildren asking me, why weren't you in the war? Why were you a slacker?" In one of his early artistic endeavors, Walt altered his birth date on his passport application from 1901 to 1900 so that he could go and serve his country. The Walt Disney Archives has that famous document, and once you know to look at the date closely, the forgery is obvious. I won't read you the rest. This is available on waltdisney.org. This is available, which is the Walt Disney Family Museum's blog, which if you want to know more about Walt Disney, if you're an extreme hardcore Disney fan, I will tell you, either clear out a full day or maybe more than a day if you go to San Francisco to go to the Walt Disney Family Museum. I'm one of those people where I wanted to open. They have a lot of digital displays where you can open documents and read letters and things like that. And I'm a psychopath, so I stood there and we just opened everything. We watched every video file. Like we really went through it. And so if you're like that, and if you want to know more about the man, that's a great way. And the other great way is to go to Marceline, and the museum in Marceline has a lot of really cool family stuff on display. But the Family Museum is the premier way to learn. But obviously, you read those stories about Walt and you learn more about the man, and you see that patriotism showing through in his films and certainly in the parks during the short period he got to exist with them.
Yeah. So there is one more thing that I had kind of on my list that, like, you haven't brought it up yet, but this is the one thing I really wish I got to see, but it was before I was born.
Oh, okay.
The America on Parade.
This is not where I thought you were going. Okay. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, the parade, America on Parade. So that was during the bicentennial, right? It ran for a couple years or just 1 year?
The event was longer than a year.
Okay.
Because this is the first major modern parade for Disney parks, America.
Oh, is it really?
Really and truly. So our good friend, Don Dorsey, who is a legend, not yet named a Disney legend, but hopefully at the next D23 will be finally named a Disney legend, obviously known for his work on Main Street Electrical Parade and many other things. But as far as the modern parades with the advanced sound system and the float design and all of those things. America on Parade is kind of the beginning of all of that.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so remember, the electrical parade that debuts in 1972 is not complicated. It's mostly a lot of lit up flats. It's most of what it is. When that comes back in 77, it is a huge production, and it was made for Disney World and Disneyland, and they're big three-dimensional floats, and they have the synchronized audio system where it follows it down the street. Mm-hmm. All of that actually begins the year prior with America on Parade.
Wow, okay. So it was an important parade then.
Very important. And again, it was basically like the Year of a Million Dreams, like What Will You Celebrate, any of those annual, those big year-long or 18-month or 24-month-long events.
Yeah.
The bicentennial was one of those things.
Okay. I just thought it looked wacky. There were a lot of weird floats.
The sandwich.
The sandwich?
There's a giant stack sandwich.
Okay.
And then the Aristocats are playing jazz.
I know there's a big turkey.
There's a big turkey.
Salem witch trials.
They're the big head. The big head. Which come back to life for the opening of Epcot Center in World Showcase. But the running dates was... so it actually... I was like, it was longer than just the year. So it wasn't 76. It was 70. They debuted it in the summer of 75 and was originally designed to run through 1977 to commemorate the bicentennial. America on Parade ran once during the afternoon, again just prior to nightly fireworks display, and at Disneyland traveled the full length of Disneyland from It's a Small World down to Town Square. I don't know what the end date was, but it ran most of that period. I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, the thing I have just says it was originally designed to go through 77, but I don't know.
I guess maybe it did or not. I don't remember off the top of my head. No, it ended early, September 6th of 76. Opened June 14th of 75, closing date September 6th, 76. But it says it replaced the Main Street Electrical Parade. So the Main Street Electrical Parade went away at Disneyland for this, and then came back as the Electrical Parade that you kind of know. The one that we all fell in love with, the 77 version, is what replaced America on Parade, essentially.
I don't even understand some of these floats. I'm looking at something that just lists them. That's not pictures.
Weird.
Like Sunday Picnic. Like, okay.
That's the sandwich.
Is that the sandwich? Okay.
It's a giant sandwich.
I really want to know what was in the Modern Tech float in 1975.
There's video of this parade out there. You can go watch it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Wait, what is it?
Square dancing?
I'm going to find this.
Dunking stall? I don't know.
I'm going to find these. Hold on a minute. I'm going to find... There's the turkey. I found the turkey. You know what the turkey looks like.
Yeah, the turkey, I know,
There's the turkey.
So there was a float with Ben Franklin flying a kite.
Yes.
Was it?
There's a Christopher Columbus float.
Yeah, I see that.
The thing that everyone remembers, obviously, is the opening, the eagle with Mickey. And
they still do
Goofy
merchandise with that. Yeah.
Yeah. For the 50th, we got the highlight of the 50th at Walt Disney World was merchandise because they did stuff like that. I know Betsy Ross was crazy because it's like a giant flag flowing down the street, and she's in an oversized chair.
Yes, right there.
It's pretty psychotic.
It's so good.
Oh, here's your industry. So it's a cruise ship and a train and an astronaut and...
Well, no, I think that's the transportation float.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, because there's a transportation float, and I bet you that's that.
That would probably be... There's a guy in a car, a Wright brother in an airplane. What was the technology part?
No,
but it can't be good. I don't remember this.
It's pretty cool. Oh, the stagecoach one looks pretty cool with the horses and... Someone with a big head.
I'm gonna scroll quickly through this parade. Pause for editing. Oh my
Using
goodness.
Modern technology.
I am. There was a college float that was just like a megaphone. There's a football player. There's a big guy with a giant head and a giant helmet, and then like a woman stuck on a megaphone.
Oh wow, a cheerleader.
And it says like state on it.
Oh my gosh.
There's a sandwich. There's the giant sandwich.
That is fantastic.
The giant, I reference at least once a week the giant sandwich at some point in time.
Of course you do.
Yeah, so there's film and there's the dwarfs coming out of a film reel.
Right. Yep.
So what is this next? Yeah, so there's a lot of Disney characters on film reels in here. What is this thing in the middle? Is it a TV? Oh, it's a TV. So like Winnie the Pooh and friends are inside a television.
Oh, look at that.
So it was a way to work Disney characters in, I guess. Even then, they were squeezing IP, and Dumbo's at the circus.
Yep.
There's the Statue of Liberty.
That's so good.
This is amazing. I mean, the floats are beautiful. Oh, Uncle Sam's on.
They really are. Yeah, I had no idea that one was so important to like further parade technology.
It's the beginning of the modern parade. It's a very big deal. So the thing I thought you were going to bring up was America Sings.
Oh, yeah.
So for those that don't know, the Carousel of Progress began as an attraction at the World's Fair in New York in 1964-65. When the fair ended, General Electric opted to continue to sponsor it and move it to Disneyland. So Disneyland built a Carousel Theater and opened the Carousel of Progress. Now, that opens, Walt Disney World opens, and GE goes, hey, you've got that big new park in Florida, which is probably getting higher attendance. Could we move our show? And Disney was like, if you want to pay for it, sure. And so they did. They took the Carousel of Progress, and they took a lot of the parts, and they sent them to Florida, and they built the Carousel of Progress in Florida, still sponsored by General Electric. Now, when it moved, they made a lot of changes. We'll talk about that at our event in January because we're also celebrating 50 years of the Carousel of Progress in Florida, which was January 15th of 75 also. Same day as Space Mountain. But now at Disneyland, you have this big empty Carousel Theater.
Right.
Tell me if you've heard this one before. Big empty Carousel Theater, and no one knew what to do, but the Bicentennial was coming up. And the Bicentennial was this all-encompassing part of American life. Everyone was doing something related to the Bicentennial. Your local diner probably did something. It was something everyone wanted to be involved. It's like the millennium for those of us who are younger. I assume similar to like the passing of the next millennium. Obviously, that was a worldwide event, but think of how everyone wanted to do something millennium related. When that was happening, everyone in America wanted to do something bicentennial related. So Mark Davis drew up an idea for a show to replace Carousel Progress in its empty theater called America Sings, with the idea being it is a time-traveling trip through American music, hosted by an eagle and an owl. And there'd be all very cute Mark Davis animal characters. Mark was very good at that, as evidenced by the Country Bears and also Mark's animation history, his characters from Bambi and otherwise. So Mark drew up a bunch of really charming animal musician characters. And so the show ran at Disneyland until the 80s. It was very successful, but then it started to die out. And as it died out, everyone was looking for a reason to steal those animatronics. And so the first time they steal the animatronics is Star
Tours, right?
What are we going to do with the queue at Star Tours? Will anyone notice if a couple of geese are missing from America Sings? And so they take some geese out of America Sings, they strip them down, and they become goose droids, which one of my favorite things. That blew them. They were already my favorite as a kid, and then you get older and the internet came about and you could read about this stuff, and then it's like they're from another attraction. That's why they're geese. It wasn't just like a joke.
Yeah,
they're goose droids because they rip the bodies and the skin off of them. That's amazing. And then, of course,
they slowly just steal the animatronics.
Things just vanished. The show ran with them missing. They just weren't
amazing.
there.
Yeah.
And then finally, when Splash Mountain was coming to pass, the decision was made it would save us a lot of money if we just use these. And Tony, I believe the story goes, Tony was told, can you find a way for the log flume to use them? And so Tony, like, famously had that car ride. But the only reason Song of the South was chosen, I want to make this clear for people. Song of the South was not chosen because it was a relevant film. It was not chosen because it was the height of Disney filmmaking. It was chosen because Mark Davis drew those characters. So the Breyers were drawn by Mark Davis. The America Sings characters were drawn by Mark Davis. So if you put them together in a room, they look the same. They look like they're from the same place, and they work. And so that's why it was like, well, that's what we'll do. And so all of those animatronics from America Sings, or a majority, not all of them, made their way across the park to Critter Country and Bear Country. and were put in Splash Mountain, and that was the end of America Sings. So not a long-lived attraction. It had I think it was just over a decade it existed.
Yeah, I have a friend who grew up in Anaheim, and she holds that attraction very near and dear to her heart. So is it considered a quality attraction? Do people generally like it?
Okay. I love it. I didn't see it in person. There is great video out there. I love it, and it clearly has an emotional hook on people because it has been referenced a million times in the park since. In Remember Dreams Come True, the 50th fireworks show, that Pop Goes the Weasel, which is part of the music in the attraction, kept coming up in the show. Every patriotic holiday when they do signage at Disneyland, the eagle and the owl are on there. So yeah. Sam and what was the name of the other character? That wasn't trying to find the other.
So is it?
Oh, Sam and Ollie.
Is it like famous songs from the American Songbook over the decades? Are there any original pieces in that, or is it all?
So the song, like in Carousel Progress, to get you from room to room, they sing "There's a Great Baby," and you roll to the next scene, and they're still playing it, but in a different style. In this case, it was Yankee Doodle. So Yankee Doodle played in different styles as you went from room to room, and very famously, there's a 1970s modern jazz version of Yankee Doodle, which plays people out, which is fantastic. I advise you to go give it a listen. But so the intro, he played a genie with the light brown hair, and every scene you'd have Pop Goes the Weasel.
Okay.
Act 1 was the Deep South. Wonder why this worked for Splash Mountain. We had Dixie, Camptown Races. This would have definitely lasted. My Old Kentucky Home. Polly Wolly Doodle.
What?
Lord, I wish I was a single girl again.
What?
Down in the Valley and Down by the Riverside, which you can't even still hear at Riverside at Port Orleans.
Oh,
they used to sing that when they'd open dinner service at Riverside Mill. They'd all used to come out and sing and clap to Down by the Riverside. It was great. Then you would head west, like Old Chisholm Trail, Billy the Kid, Home on the Range. Act 3 was the gay 90s. So you're talking about the 1890s, Wandering Boy, Sweet Adeline, A Bird in a Gilded Cage, Tarara Boom Die. And then you get to modern times.
Oh, boy.
Modern times in the 70s.
What they do?
It ends with Joy to the World.
Oh, okay.
There is a rock and roll crane. He's nuts. He's just this big crane figure. And he's got glasses. He's got cool sunglasses and like dyed hair. And he's just jamming out. And it's this really weird, for the time, it's a weird animatronic. The way he's animated is super weird, but very cool. But all of the Americana attractions we've talked about are about American history.
Yeah.
What I like about this was it's a weird, cool premise, which is, well, we've done American history attractions. What about the history of American music?
Yeah, no, I like that.
Which really cool premise. But obviously, many of these songs in here have appeared elsewhere in the parks and have in more recent years been removed from the parks because they are deemed offensive or no longer politically correct. So this would have not. I mean, it didn't make it out of the 80s anyway.
Right.
People in the 80s were already like, I'm good.
I'm good. I'm done.
So
we're down to one animatronic. You guys stole all the rest. You might as well just close it.
The geese keep vanishing. We don't know what to do. The geese there's like one goose now.
Even the goose think this attraction's over. They're going. All right. So do you have any? I have one more kind of topic I want to go into, but do you have any other attractions or anything like that we didn't touch on? Because mine is not really attraction specific.
No, I have one more thing I want to talk about though. But go. So let me see what your topic is.
Since we were talking about presidential election, just presidential tie-ins with the Disney parks.
Yes.
And I feel like that goes. Does that go all the way back to Disneyland's opening? Right, like. With Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan. And Nixon.
Yeah, Nixon was the monorail. The opening of the monorail.
Nixon visited as vice president, right?
Yes.
Did he ever visit as president? Do you know? I might be asking you things you don't
he went
really.
to Disney World as
Well,
president.
yeah,
We'll
the
get there.
Watergate, right?
The famous speech.
Yeah.
I don't know if people probably know. It's like the Beatles thing. Everyone knows. He gave his "I am not a crook" speech at the Contemporary Ballroom of the Americas. But yeah, Richard Nixon dedicated the monorail.
Right.
Was he vice president at the time, or was he? Well, he would have had to have been was he governor of California?
I thought he was vice president.
Let me find out. In 59?
Yeah, he was around for a while. Because he also ran for president a bunch and lost, too.
Did he? He was vice president from 53 to 61. That's right, because he had the Secret Service with him. Because the famous story goes, they sent the monorail with him, but the Secret Service didn't get on.
Oh, right.
And so the monorail leaves the station and they all just go, oh my God, the vice president's out on the monorail and we're standing on the platform. We're not with him. And they're just like, what do you want us to do? It went. Like, he'll be back.
Yeah, it goes around.
Yeah, but obviously as Secret Service, you're supposed to stay with the president.
Yeah.
They were a little more easygoing. This is pre-JFK, so maybe the mood was a little lighter than it might have been several years later.
Now, you did tease me. There's a JFK assassination tie-in.
There is a connection to Walt Disney World with the JFK assassination.
All right.
It was November of, when did he get assassinated? November of
63?
No, it's later. Oh, it is. You're right. November 20. That felt early for me, but that's all right. November 22nd, 1963.
I told you, presidential history.
That's good. That's good. That's why we're good at that board game.
Yeah.
But anyway, so November 22nd, 1963 is obviously an important date in American history. It's an important date in Disney history because while that was going on in Texas, Walt Disney and a plane full of his cohorts were coming to look at the plot of land just down the road. It was the first time they flew over the property.
On that day?
It was on that day. So they land from looking at the property in, I believe, in Louisiana. I don't know where in Louisiana. I'm sure it's out there. I don't have it in front of me. They land in Louisiana to fuel the plane, and that's when someone tells them that the president has been shot.
Wow.
So that's where they found out. They found out on their way home from their first time looking at the Walt Disney World property.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, they were already looking at the Disney World property in as early as 63.
Yeah.
But that's the connection.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know if there's any other interesting presidential visits to the park or anything like that.
Obama came to Magic Kingdom.
I know Obama.
That was very
so
famous.
He did a speech.
The economic speech,
there,
yeah.
Right? Was that, to your knowledge, is that the only sitting president to give a speech in a Disney theme park like that?
I don't think so. I think Reagan did it. I think Reagan was president when he spoke at Epcot.
Okay.
Let's see. Obviously, there was always a strong connection there because Reagan was an actor and had worked with Disney and knew Walt Disney.
Yeah.
So here it is. President Reagan's remarks at Epcot Center. What was the date on this? March 8th of 83. So he was definitely he was president.
Yeah.
So Reagan and Obama. Did Clinton? No, because Clinton didn't even come to his attraction. Hillary came.
Like to the dedication or the opening?
Wait, no. Hold on a second. Hold on. Whoa. I'm having a moment here.
Uh-oh. Here we go. What do we got?
I think he was invited to the 25th anniversary of Disney World, and Hillary came. Like, without him. Like, he couldn't make it. But he sent the First Lady. Yeah. Hillary Clinton came to the rededication of Walt Disney World for its 25th anniversary. So here's the photo, actually. They had like...
oh, look at that.
They had underprivileged kids. I forget what organization.
That's great.
There. And so, yeah, she appeared. There's a photo of Michael Eisner and her, and she's hugging one of the kids.
Yeah.
I don't think he came to either thing. I think they invited him to come see the Hall of Presidents, and he couldn't make it, and then he couldn't make it to the 25th, but Hillary came.
Like, do we know? Did like George Bush come and watch his own show?
I think he did.
Really?
I'm gonna have to fact check all of this as we go.
Yeah, I don't expect you to know this stuff off the top of your head. Yeah. That'd be fascinating. I never thought about that. I never thought about the sitting president coming and sitting in the theater watching.
We know Trump did not. We know
Biden.
Biden did not. I think George Bush, it wasn't like publicized, maybe, but he got a private viewing.
Oh, I'd imagine it'd have to be a private viewing. I'm not like you go sit down and it's like, oh, hey, Bill.
But I mean, obviously, if it had been a media event, they might have been, screened media and let them in the show with him, right?
No, I think it's pretty fascinating to see the kind of interaction some of the presidents had with the park, because people know about a few of those, but I guess so. Then you have a few in between Ford and Carter. Would they have ever come? I don't remember ever hearing stories about them necessarily visiting the Disney theme parks. So yeah, it would just be.
So here's an interesting note.
The Reagan Epcot thing, I forgot about that.
Yeah. Here's an interesting note about why they updated the Hall of Presidents in the 90s, not only to add Clinton. Not because of Clinton, but the focus of the attraction changed because of Eric Foner, a professor of history at Columbia University. In 1991, Foner contacted Disney's then CEO Michael Eisner with concerns about how great moments with Mr. Lincoln failed to deal with slavery and the issue of race. Eisner listened. He invited Foner to rework the Hall of Presidents. Although the original 1971 script included the issue of slavery, the new script, narrated by poet Maya Angelou, focused more attention on slavery and justice, and that we the people must mean all the people. So that was also that there was a big show change that came with Clinton, and some people call that the slavery version of that show because it really focuses on that part in history. It is a majority of that version of the show.
Yeah.
Then 2001, George W. Bush. It was updated.
Because didn't they get into a rhythm where they were actually changing the film every time they changed the president too?
I think George W. Bush still had, I'm going to be wrong at some point here. I believe we have video of the Bush version on this channel somewhere. I believe George W. Bush still had the Clinton film.
Okay.
I believe Obama.
Is that when Morgan Freeman did that one?
No, that still Maya Angelou for George W. Bush. Morgan Freeman did it for Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then they changed it again with Trump, right?
I'm trying to think if it was Obama when the show became The President Was One of Us was the theme. Was that the Obama version?
I really think that was the Morgan Freeman narration when that.
Yeah, he was one. That's right. So it changed for Obama. Obama was the one where the president, he was one of us.
Yeah.
Very famous Morgan Freeman delivery.
Totally. You can't do that.
And my favorite is, which president is it that says, at least...
Andrew Jackson.
Andrew Jackson goes, what is it, a fool...
who could only find one way to spell a word or something?
More than one. A fool that can't find more than one way to spell a word. Yeah. And that's my favorite line. They drank tubs of punch on the lawn.
I know. That was so good.
Damn poor fool indeed who can't think of at least two ways to spell a word.
Yeah.
It's my favorite. I was so mad when that was ripped out for the but then with Trump they did the current version, which is not my favorite, but
no.
Not because of him. I don't like the film.
No, I don't think it's a good film.
I think the Obama version is the best version of the attraction, and not because of Barack Obama. I think it's the best version of the film that existed. I think it's well balanced. I like the idea that the Hall of Presidents says that anyone can be president. And I know there's someone yelling at their computer right now. Why did they have to send that message to everyone? But anyway, the message was the president is one of us.
Right.
And I thought the whole time watching, I was like, this is a really cool way to frame the show. Mm-hmm. I like this. And then the new one is it's just like watching a History Channel doc. It's like a real boring History Channel documentary film.
There's no, Morgan Freeman, you can sit and listen to him all day, right?
But I think if anyone read that, it still would have been great.
Yes.
He elevated it, but it still would have been entertaining.
Yeah, I'll give you that. That's the thing. It was entertaining, but I think it also, you need that voice work for the fluctuations, and whereas this one is just documentary.
It's very bland.
That's all it is.
So bland.
There's no entertainment value to it.
It's like Teddy Roosevelt. His wife and his mother died in the same house on the same day, and it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Cool. America. As opposed to the American Adventure, which 1982 Epcot, what they were good at was optimism and what's the other word I'm looking for?
Innovation?
No, more like the feeling you got from Epcot attractions. But optimism's the word. You would leave things optimistic about what the future could be, and that was true also, I think, of not just the Future World stuff, but the World Showcase stuff.
Oh, I think
the
that's
end of American Adventure, you come out and it's that song is incredible in this montage, and you see these great Americans and these great moments in history, and the sky opens,
sure,
and the music booms, and they wave from the top of the Statue of Liberty. You go, this is America, yeah. Like the foreigners are coming out going, yeah, I love this. I love this country. Let's get a turkey leg. Yeah. Let's do it. And that's true of everything at Epcot. Like I remember getting emotional on Spaceship Earth. Like I love that ending where it talked about how communication is the thing that will bind the whole world together and bring us closer together. And there is a beautiful message in all of those attractions, horizons, and we dream what the future can be. But the American Adventure, it was true of the American Adventure too, where it was, and that I love the dialogue at the end of that show between Ben Franklin and Mark Twain. I love that. Mm-hmm. These glasses I invented may be rose colored, but the golden age of America has never blah blah blah. It's really fantastic.
Yeah, and
very motivational and very optimistic, and probably something people need to hear the last 8 to 12 years.
I agree.
Really, really cool. The last topic, though, I want to talk about is we talk about Disney and America, but Disney is America, right? To the rest of the world, Disney is a representation of who we are, right? A country where you can dream and you could do anything. And our greatest dreamer, maybe in many cases, or at least one of them, was Walt Disney. And the man just decided, I want to build an amusement park. But amusement parks are these dirty, dingy things. They attract poor clientele that, you'd riffraff of people that drink, alcoholics. You don't want any of this. And he said, mine will be different. And he lived in a country where you could, achieve something like that. And that became this vision for the world. And then the world came to Disneyland, elected officials and dignitaries and such from around the world came that you had to see Disneyland. There was nothing like it in the world. And it wasn't long before people around the world, all these people went, we want one. We would like to have one. And you're coming out of World War II where the world was so divided. And then within 20 years, it's incredible that the Japanese, within 20 years of being at war with them, a very dark and what an incredible dark period for Japan and America.
Sure.
And as at odds as any two countries could possibly be. And then within 20 years to be like, we would like a Disneyland. And Walt was like, I don't know yet. He was like, I don't know.
They came to Walt? Are you serious?
Walt was alive. Walt was alive the first time they asked.
Really?
He was alive the first time they asked.
Wow.
And they kept calling until finally Card Walker, who we just talked about, finally was like, all right. He spit out a deal that he thought they'd never take. And the guy is on the phone. I forget who it was who's on the phone with them. He goes, they said yes. He's like, damn. And then they had to figure that all out. And Bob Weiss comes back in there. But what's amazing is it's a bit of America all around the world now, in Paris, France, in Tokyo, Japan, in Hong Kong, and in Shanghai, China. people go there. These are American theme parks in other countries. I know in some of the parks they talk about obviously there is a cultural influence that comes from where the park is built, but there is still a lot of America, right? There are a lot of those parks where you have a restaurant that serves hot dogs on Main Street. You have a Main Street USA in most of those parks, not in Shanghai, but in most of those parks, you have a Main Street where you can get a hot dog.
Yeah.
That's not a thing you could do every day. And some of those cultures have assimilated more of American culture into there. So, and obviously in Japan, you could easily find a hamburger. You could easily find fried chicken. You could easily find a lot of those things. There are some things that are still wholly, truly American that in Japan, we actually introduced things. Popcorn. Popcorn didn't exist in Japan until Disney.
Yeah.
So in Japan, when someone mentions popcorn, the only thing that comes to mind is Disney, is Disneyland.
Yeah.
It didn't exist in that country before Disneyland. Is that not
That's
mind
pretty
blowing?
crazy. I mean, you could tell like it can spread culture, food, things like that.
The turkey
because
leg
it comes in the park that could emanate out from there, right? Like so,
people wait hours in these parks for turkey legs, because turkey are not
so
indigenous to these countries.
Yeah.
So I didn't think about it in Japan. I never thought about it, and I'm sitting there one day and I go, "Is the reason they're waiting hours for it because you can't get it anywhere else?" And it's like, I'm at the American theme park in Japan. I want to try turkey. And Shanghai, I realized that I didn't realize in Japan they don't have them either. So they're an American bird.
Yeah.
And so in Shanghai, obviously, when they opened, the hours and hours and hours people waited for turkey legs because you can't get them anywhere else. It was a big deal for the 30th anniversary of Disneyland Paris. They tried to introduce food items that are more quintessential to the Disney parks around the world. They didn't have a lot of them. The turkey leg was introduced, and it became a big deal for people because it's, turkey. Let's see what this is.
Yeah.
I've heard the Americans talk about the turkey leg. I have to try one.
No Americans are talking about turkey legs.
But then also in Paris, I mean, that Main Street.
Only to say that smells awful. Please get that away from me.
That's how I feel. But in Paris, that Main Street is such an incredible celebration of not only America, but the relationship between America and France.
Okay.
There's a whole side of the arcades. One whole side of the street is dedicated to the creation of the Statue of Liberty. The other side is dedicated to American invention. They're all real patents. You go to the other side, you see real invention patents for things, because the patent office at one point was filled with too much, and they auctioned.
Oh, like when you say real, like
there's like real devices,
okay.
like the real patent devices.
Yeah,
like the things you would submit to get the patent made.
Yeah.
You had to create, in some cases, like a miniature version of your invention to get the patent. And eventually, the patent office was like, "We're out of room. We'll have an auction." And Disney acquired a lot of those pieces to put in the display cases. And so there are American history museums on Main Street at Disneyland Paris.
Wow.
It's really incredible. But yeah, so I just want to talk about how Disney is America, and in many cases, it's a little bit of America in all of these foreign countries is the Disney theme park.
I love it.
Yeah.
Now, is the pressed penny American? Because we pressed Abraham Lincoln's face into a machine.
It is. And so in other countries, if you ever wondered why the Zinker happened.
Yeah.
So we talked about this, happened in the comments on our show.
Zinkers or stinkers.
Yeah. Someone wrote in comments about how they want a real pressed penny. They want a penny that is pressed into a souvenir medallion.
Right.
But in more recent history, it's become common that it's the Zinker. It's a zinc coin that gets pressed into the thing you get out of the machine.
Right.
They're not pressing real money, because in most cases you don't put real money in anymore. The reason that had to happen was the opening of Tokyo Disneyland. They don't have pennies.
Right. Okay.
And so you would put Japanese coins in, and it presses the Zinker.
Really?
That was invented for I believe, I don't think anywhere else in the world had them yet. I think because they wanted Tokyo Disneyland to be authentic, they went to the company and said, we would like a pressed penny machine. And they said, your people don't have pennies. Put the pennies in the machine. Okay. He's like, all right. Preload. They're like, we're not going to put real money in there. Let's just make it. They won't know. Just put this thing in. And so they're pressed pennies, but they're not. They're souvenir medallions.
Sure.
And if you watched my Tokyo vlogs from the summer, all you did was watch me get coins every week, because that's what most of what I did was collect pressed coins. Yeah. But
Love
yeah,
it.
America.
That's
I mean,
so
it's
good.
You brought it back around to Abraham Lincoln.
I did.
Yeah, the pressed penny. Yeah, the presidents are all over our Disney parks.
They really are.
Yeah.
There is a lot of America. That's so awesome. Like, so do you have the favorite? Is it American Adventure? If you had to say your favorite patriotic attraction,
Lincoln. I don't know.
Or is it Great Moments?
I think it's Lincoln.
Okay.
Just because my parents, their first Disney attractions were the World's Fair.
Yeah.
And so to see that and know that that's like what my parents saw in 1964 was kind of magical. I think there's a personal connection with that one. American Adventure is a close second, though. I love both of those. Hall of Presidents, it's fine. I think it needs to be there. I would like to see it stay because it's important, but it's not my favorite. Yours? American Adventure.
American Adventure. Yeah. I mean, the current, I would definitely say Muppets, the great moments in American history.
Yeah,
was it great moments in
history?
In history.
Yeah, but just the American parts.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. We didn't even mention Sam the Eagle in Muppet Vision, right? He's very patriotic America part.
But he's not a Disney. He is now, but
Miss Piggy has a Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
More America.
She's literally in the fountain.
In the attraction,
Yeah. And Great Movie Ride was the Great American movie ride.
Right? Yeah.
They are American movies.
Yeah.
So that was one of the names at one point, too, was kicked around. Of course, there was Great Moments at the movies, and then Michael Eisner came in and said, it's the movie ride. And they're like, can we call it something? Can we had the word, Eric Jacobson, if you watched Stage 89, you know Eric Jacobson's story, where he said, can we just call it the Great Movie Ride or the Great American Movie Ride? And he was like, Great Movie Ride. And then they're like,
Great Movie.
They're like, okay, fine.
That's what it is.
That was they landed on that as the agreement. But yeah.
All right. What do you think, Gertie? We good?
Gertie's good.
She's
very patriotic in her red, white, and
green.
This is almost blue.
It is.
It's almost blue. It's fine. If you enjoyed the show and you're watching us on YouTube, hit the like button and subscribe. We deeply appreciate it. If you're listening to us in audio form, we appreciate you as well. Thanks for listening to us. And we'll see you real soon.
Bye.